Well, this is how I've been progressing with this filly. Got about 20-25 rides in there, somewhere in there. I don't really count, but that's about right. So I just like to convey kind of my thoughts about what I'm doing, what I think I'm doing, what I'd like to do. Normally I take her on a long walk before I work her in the arena around the ranch. Maybe I trot her for a really long time. I do some trot work here, so she might be a little more tense than normal. But my goal is to teach her how to move straight, even on a circle, and stay right in between me, my legs, my hips, and the reins right out through her head. I'm not really trying to fix her head in any one position. I would just like her to learn to move her shoulders and front feet right out in front of me, right out in front of that saddle. And I only need just a little tip of her head right behind the jaw laterally, or right behind the pole. I might achieve that by a little lift up on that inside rein. She gets a little quick there. So I try to keep my hands as close as possible, inside my hips really, right about the width of her shoulders. My inside hip might be advanced just a tad for that direction. Maybe I'm lifting up through my rib cage. I try to keep my shoulders pretty even. But I'd just like her to get straight. I'd rather have her travel straight and have to drift with her a little bit than make her worry about staying on a perfect circle. If she starts feeling that outside rein there, it has some meaning on her neck. That inside rein, for both reins, is just straight out through her shoulders. The other thing I try to start getting is a little tempo at this point. For instance, in the trot, she wants to get quick, she wants to slow down, she wants to speed up. I'm trying not to hold her in place, but I have what I call a little cushion. That hackamore generally is either on or off, but they're somewhere in between. These horses seem to sort out that they're somewhere in between on and off, and I just call it a cushion. Have some way to regulate their speed with a float in the reins, and somehow they tend to differentiate between when that hackamore might make a signal. Maybe it might be the same signal as stopping, for instance, but they got to sort it out. Maybe you just meant slow down a little bit. So there's little things that happen there. It's hard to describe. Anyway, you can see she just got a slight look to the right, for instance, there. And I might change directions. And I just kind of change my hips a little bit. My inside hip goes slightly forward on that side. And I don't want her looking to the outside so much, but I only need her just barely looking to the inside. And as far as my lower leg goes, I'm not really using a lot of leg. I'm not really teaching her how to push from my leg or any of those things. It's more from a position of your legs more than it is actual leg pressure, if that makes sense. Naturally, we want them to move away from our leg in certain situations, but they learn that from position. There, I didn't really ask her to go sideways there. She drifted over there, but my leg was in that position. So I try to get them to learn by association of consistency of position. So that's where I'm at the trot. We'll do some work at the lope here. So here's some loping, canter work. I really waited a couple weeks before I started working on this. Pretty much all she wanted to do was either trot or run. So to get her kind of put together where we could start loping some circles, get things under control. Anyway, I work on the same things I talked about at the trot. I'd really like her to just learn to stay right between those reins and actually have that rein move her over. A little inside rein, little outside rein, little lifting up with my hips. I just want to keep her straight up. I don't want her leaning one way or the other. My body position for a lead, my outside leg bends back, but it doesn't necessarily push her over. It's just a position. It just touches her over there. My inside leg, I actually leave right at the girth, and I actually pick them up a little bit with that inside leg, just below my knee if I can. So it's a combination of that body position. I'm not just putting a spur into her on the outside of her, making her pick up that lead. I'm actually picking her up with both legs. But again, I want to say it's not really about a lot of pressure. It's just really about a touch. And you use the circle to help establish it. As far as slowing down or stopping, she's starting to respond to my seat, actually to just respond to not riding. My hips are moving with her while she lopes, then my hips sort of stop moving, and she's pretty sensitive, so she picks up on all this stuff. So again, there's no big exaggerated movements to teach her. I'd like her to pick up her right lead just like I would when she's really broke, but she's got to kind of do it from a trot there, or just a nice straight easy lope off. There's no big pushing them sideways or bending them or doing all this stuff. I don't really find it's necessary. I'm trying to get to where I teach a horse from position and teach him from the kind of lightness I'd like when they're finished, not using a lot of heavy pressure till they respond and this kind of thing. So it's pretty challenging trying to stay light through all of this. Again, maybe you can see my reins moving. I start to lose direction. Circle gets wide. I kind of have to bring her back in just a little bit, but I just kind of try and help her. No big correction. Get her as straight as possible. And then there's another example of developing a stop. I haven't stopped her a whole lot. I just let that happen, and I think that's going to lead to something in the future. So here I'd like to mention something about picking up the wrong lead. The point is, it's not a big correction. You just start over. So I think she's set up right. She's not. I just start again. It doesn't happen again. I just start again, and then you get it. And so I should mention that when I do use my leg, it's usually just the part below my knee, my calf muscle. Depends on the horse and the size and where your legs end up on them, but so that's why it's not that obvious to see what my legs are doing. But that's the idea there. This is kind of more of the same. There's places where you can see me use my reins to help her stay in between them. A slight look to the left, lifting my outside rein a little bit. I'd just like her to associate when she's moving that shoulder, try to get a time that rein actually helps, is part of that shoulder reaching over there and staying in front. There I'm kind of lifting my rein up against her neck. That's my idea. I think this is where the reinsmanship is supposed to come in here somewhere. There, you can see I'm just wanting her to move that shoulder over there, but it's not a big flexion. It's not a big leg getting put in there. And sometimes even I might counterflex them just a tad, just to accentuate that I can move that shoulder. Here's a little direction, but then here's that outside rein, kind of in conjunction with that. Move them over. That's just a little thing, maybe to add in there. Again, preparation for lead from a trot. Part of this cue also comes from my hips. I start rocking my hips like they are when you're loping. I kind of do that ahead of time. That's another idea of association. This filly, she's stretching out a little bit more, getting a little more relaxed in places. So really it's just more of the same. It's a lot of loping, it seems like. I don't see any reason why you couldn't do this outside too, even on uneven ground, in the meadow or the pasture or something. Another example of just stopping riding and her coming to a stop. Here's more examples of little rein play at the lope. There's one thing I wanted to mention, was talking about developing a maintenance of form. There's a certain form I think we eventually want in our horse, the way they travel, the way they carry themselves. The trick is down the line when we have some kind of self-carriage, that's really whether or not we can maintain the form, or the horse can maintain the form. So from the beginning I'm thinking about this and developing a way, maintaining position. Well, these young horses are a little bit all over the place. They don't have the self-carriage yet. They don't quite stay put. But we don't want to micromanage them either. So these are just ideas, I think. There's a little more rein play with the outside rein, shaping up, this kind of thing. One day this filly may stop pretty good. Now one day you might want to start working cattle or something. I know I do. These are things you could do outside, but a little preparation to ways you might have to teach them to handle. I think a person can do a little too much of this sometimes. I don't see any reason why you couldn't do this outside either. I usually look for something that might spook them a little bit and try to put these little handles on them. Again, it's all the same idea, getting a horse to work straight up through their shoulder. She's a little green at this, so I don't want to do too much. So, a little more of the same, little footwork in response to rein work, with as little interference for me as possible as far as bending her or twisting her up into knots. Working her one-handed, trying to work her in a refined way, like you would more when they're straight up in a bridle. It's a little bit like training with them instead of training on them, if that makes sense. Trying to work from a little bit to get a lot, rather than starting with a lot, putting a lot to them to get just a little bit. I'm not sure that makes complete sense, but it's new for me a little bit, new place to operate, and I'm going to try and see how far I can take it with this filly. I like what she's given me so far.